feel like black people have revolutionized poverty and made it look so fucking cool that people think we like it.
Nah,
we don't like it. We're just making the best
too,
of it.
Even
Unfortunately, people think that blackness is tied to poverty. They think that the black experience is being poor. That's why when you have others who equate poverty to being black. Oh, I don't have any privilege. I grew up poor. Why the fuck do you think because you've been broke that you know what it feels like to be black? No, you don't. You've just been poor.
Just trying to stay sucker free in a world full of lollipops. I'm seeing all the ops. Fake news, fake views. It's an illness, the cure to the sick shit. It's the Pretty Realist. Yeah.
What's good, family? Welcome to Pretty Realist. If this is your first time joining my channel, welcome. When people speak about black culture, it's kind of hard for you to put your finger on it. The black culture for today is not really in alignment with the black culture that our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents came from, with the way that they carried themselves, with their education, with how much they knew how important education was. They knew how important it was for them to hold themselves to a certain level of class and etiquette. There's still Black Americans who stand for that conservative mindset, that conservative life, that still value family, that still value just the ability of living the American dream. No matter how much they say that the American dream, it doesn't exist for Black people. I truly don't believe that. I believe that we definitely have to work extremely hard in order for us to acquire certain things, but it's there. And today's youth has this thought, this mindset, as if they want to take on the struggles or the story of our ancestors, when our ancestors fought and died for them not to have to do that. They still went out and persevered despite all the racism, despite Jim Crow, despite slavery. Malcolm X was a whole criminal and served time and transformed his life. We're in this space right now as Black Americans, especially with this whole situation when it comes to this election, where we have no idea anymore what it means to be Black in this country, because a lot of people seem to step away from what it meant because they're so used to screaming victim. The way that we're going about things as Black America right now, it's kind of moving us backwards as opposed to moving us forward. Thomas Sowell, he's an economist. He's well into his 90s, and he speaks about the fact that no matter what your race is, you have opportunities available to you. It's up to you to persevere and put your best foot forward and not allow your race or the color of your skin to be looked at as a crutch for you to run in the Victim Olympics, for you to only think that somebody owes you something or the world is supposed to hand you something just because history says that you were set to have a bad life from the beginning. So I give you guys Thomas Sowell. Get you some water, get you some snack, because it's about to go down.
A Black kid today, I think, is probably better off, certainly materially, than, say, Ben Carson was when he was growing up. Certainly the Black kids who are growing up today have a higher material standard of living than I had. The difference was that the schools were good when I came along. They were especially good in New York at that time, hard as that is to believe. But the kids who grew up in that same place where I lived, they will not get that same education. Now that can be blamed on somebody, but it has very little to do with what happened 100 or 200 years ago. And it's true in other countries. I mean, in Nigeria, for example, there's a tribe, the Igbos, who are living in one of the least fertile parts of Nigeria, who were in fact enslaved in centuries past by other tribes and so on. When the British moved in and set up schools, the Igbos went for the schools. By the time Nigeria became independent, the Igbos had climbed above the other groups that had been ahead of them to begin with. So, but there are all kinds of cross currents of factors, the particular culture, or the particular geography. You run through the whole list of them.
You cite, in Intellectuals and Race, you cite an observation by the intelligence expert, IQ scientist, James Flynn. that just stopped me cold. After the Second World War, you've got large numbers of American troops remaining in Germany. For that matter, there's still several tens of thousands there today. And both black and white American soldiers had children with German women. And Flynn discovered that those children growing up in Germany showed no IQ differences at all. The black kids and the white kids, the same. Quoting Intellectuals and Race, Professor Flynn concluded that the reason was that the offspring of black soldiers in Germany, and now you're quoting Professor Flynn, grew up in a nation with no black subculture, close quote. Which means what? Which means they experienced exactly the same expectations. Is this the...
No, the expectations are external. The culture in which they grew up was not the culture in which black kids grew up in America today.
So they had...
There's no gangster rap that was pervasively available in Germany.
So here's what I'm getting. There is something about black subculture in America today that holds African Americans themselves back?
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, I went into this in a previous book on which about black rednecks and white liberals. Very same subculture held whites in the South back as well. That in the time this mental testing in the First World War turned up, among other things, the fact that whites from various 4 or 5 southern states scored lower on the mental test than blacks from 4 or 5 northern states. And so it really was a question of the subculture that was there, which was a handicap to both.
All right. And so...
That is pretty much what our culture represents right now. Black rednecks, the people who thrive on just negative energy, on hate, on twerking on top of people's heads who are sick, that are okay with having multiple babies with multiple baby daddies.
Y'all think I'm gonna look this pretty and not have kids? Y'all think y'all the only one that's ever approached me and wanted to like be with me? No. I have 7 kids for a reason.
And multiple baby mamas, men, I'm not excluding you either, who don't value one's choice to vote for who they want to vote for, so much so that they dehumanize them verbally. During the Great Migration, when both blacks and whites were traveling north, do you know that their own people, their own kind, did not want them to come because they were going to bring that subculture there with them? That's what ghetto, hood, ratchet. That's what ratchet pretty much is. A ratchet person is a black redneck or a redneck in general. It had nothing to do with their race and everything to do with how they were raised and what they were raised around. And that goes for anybody.
What is to be done? Take a look at President Lyndon Johnson speaking at Howard University in 1965.
Oh, yes.
But freedom is not enough. You do not wipe away the scars of centuries.
Y'all let this motherfucker speak at Howard University? Why? Oh, let me guess. It was because he was responsible for signing the Civil Rights Act. What he said about black...
By saying now, you are free to go where you want and do as you desire and choose the leaders you please. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bringing up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair.
It's pathetic. It's not a question of, there's no you who has the control to be completely fair or completely unfair. I mean, the circumstances are, so someone want.
It is. It's pathetic.
Tests on grounds that the tests were unfair. And I think it was David Reisman who said, the tests are not unfair. Life is unfair. and the tests are measuring the results. But who has control of life? Who has control of the past? Who has control of the culture that people have in the present, which they've inherited from the past?
So Lyndon Johnson,
He felt that too.
in fact, although good liberal that he was, at least in regard, Lyndon Johnson had a complicated career and changed positions on issues many times. But good liberal though he was at that moment, he was in fact engaging in a breathtaking arrogance.
Yes.
On two counts. One, that white people were the ones who were responsible for where black people stood in the race, that it was up to whites entirely. That blacks, as he described, I'm
devastating.
the black people are passive, they're acted upon.
That's right, that's right.
And then the second act of arrogance is the supposition that somehow the federal government could fix it.
Yes. It is staggering. But if you wanted to be charitable, you could say, well, he said this in 1965. But if you say, all right, why are people now repeating it in 2013 when we've had nearly half a century of experience to the contrary? And if you look within the black community, those blacks who had escaped what I call the black redneck culture, they've moved on. So, but it's the culture the different parts of the black community had. They were different.
Yeah.
Daniel Patrick Moynihan, in his famous 1965 report entitled "The Negro Family: The Case for National Action," close quote. Longish quotation, but it gets to something, I believe. Moynihan, the fundamental problem is that of family structure. The Negro family in the urban ghettos is crumbling. A middle class has managed to save itself, but for vast numbers of the unskilled and poorly educated, the fabric of conventional social relationships has all but disintegrated. So long as this situation persists, the cycle of poverty and disadvantage will continue to repeat itself, close quote. When Moynihan wrote those words, the illegitimacy rate among African Americans was 25%. Today, the illegitimacy rate among white Americans is 36%. Among Hispanics, more than 50%, and among African Americans, more than 70%.
Yes.
Aside from throwing up your hands in despair, what is to be done?
The first thing to be done is to understand that this was a result of policies begun in the 1960s.
Yep.
This is not a legacy of what happened 100 years before the 1960s.
The breakdown of the black family is not a legacy of slavery.
No, if you the classic study of this goes all the way back to the era of slavery, and they find that most black kids, even under slavery, had lived with two parents, and that was true all the way up until the 1960s. And so, if you really want to find out what's changed, it has changed since the 1960s.
I don't think people understand how important the family dynamic is. As somebody who didn't grow up with their father, it showed for a long time. Now, my mom, she got married when I was 10 years old. My stepdad, he is a very big part of my life. I know the difference between how me and my brother were raised compared to my sister, and we see it in the way that we have went through life. Me and my brother we didn't grow up with our dads. We had two different dads. We saw a lot coming up, and we struggled a lot. Me being a woman, struggling out here, trying to figure out my life, being in several abusive relationships. It took for me to go through a lot to get to that point to where I could heal from that. The father is the first person in a girl's life to show her how a man is supposed to love her in any culture. And they still do it in other cultures, but they don't really do it in black cultures, where you couldn't even date a man until the dad met him first. The dad was responsible for who his daughter was going to marry, because he had to be mentally strong, physically strong, spiritually strong. He had to be financially stable, and the dad needed to know that he could sleep good at night and knowing that his daughter was being properly taken care of, because once the dad is removed out of the picture, the husband steps in. And the mother is also responsible for pouring into the son. Be with a woman who is not trying to out-masculine you, who is a nurturer. The only reason why people got married at one point, it wasn't for love. It was to bring in resources. So the father, the family dynamic, the mother and the father's role, they are both different, but extremely important. And I really hope that our culture can get back to that. And we won't have a bunch of women out here who just want to continuously keep having these struggle babies.
And the fact that whites now have a higher rate of illegitimacy than blacks had when Moynihan wrote suggests that this is something that spreads out. But if you look at something else, if you look at those blacks, and look at black husband-wife families, the poverty rate among such families has been in single digits every year since 1994. And so if you look at the external causes, why the husband and wife families and the welfare single mom families all are facing the same society and objective things, but the results are radically different because the cultures and values are different.
So you would roll back welfare. I guess that's the principal policy. So what would Tom Sowell do? One, you'd eliminate welfare, you'd reform welfare. What would you do?
Roll it back.
All right. And what about affirmative action?
Eliminate it.
Just gone.
Yeah.
Colorblind
Yeah.
policy completely. What prospect for that do you see?
None.
No black leader of any standing. I'm talking about a political leader as opposed to an intellectual such as yourself. You've got, well, there's you, there's Walter Williams. Do you get the sense that there's a growing generation, a rising generation of African American intellectuals who say, enough of this, I'm with Tom Sowell?
Well, I don't know if they'll go that far. There's no point.
That would be asking a lot.
We definitely need term limits. Should nobody be on welfare for 10 years? Unless you're like disabled or you're a senior citizen, should no able-bodied person be on welfare for over a decade? It looks like a lot of people are using welfare right now because they make poor decisions. It's one thing to use welfare as a stepping stone. There's reasons why welfare was put in place. It wasn't put in place to be a crutch. It wasn't put in place for you to be on it for 30, 40, 50 years. Or you're on it, you haven't made any type of change, meaning you haven't decided to, hey, you know what? I got this one child. I'm on welfare. Let me get my ass in school and get me a degree so I could provide a better life for my child. Let me see what I need to do in order to fix my credit or in order for me to purchase a house or purchase a home or start a business. It's temporary assistance.
But in terms of political leaders, all the incentives politically are for black leaders to blame all problems in the black community on the larger society.
Yep.
And that enables them to take on the role of being the defender of the black community against enemies, which in turn creates the situation in which many blacks don't feel that anything that they do is going to help themselves unless it's done politically as a group.
If you all enjoyed this video, please click the bell. I would greatly appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let's get back to the video.
The hopelessness is one of the big products of the race industry. That you have no chance. I remember giving a talk at Marquette, and at the end of the talk, among the questions that was asked, a young black man got up and he said, even though I am graduating from Marquette University, what hope is there for me? And having gone through college when I was in the 50s, I don't remember any blacks saying that in the 1950s, when there was a lot more obstacles to overcome than there were when this guy is graduating from Marquette. But you have to produce that kind of feeling in order to serve the interests of those in the race industry.
Somewhere, watching this interview, there's a young Thomas Sowell. There's an African American who's smart and wants to do something with his life. It seems to me we've already got one piece of advice you'd offer to him is stay away from from the races industry. Stay away from the
Race hustlers.
Race hustlers. What advice would you give a young Thomas Sowell? How do you make something of yourself as an African American in America today?
The way anybody else would. You equip yourself with skills that people are willing to pay for.
That's game right there. If you want to make it in this world, you have to be willing to be of service in some way. At first, it was just like, I only want to help Black people, but I want to help all people because I really want us to get over ourselves and feeling as if we're just in this bubble of America and we constantly have forces that are telling us that we can't get along or that one person, one group of people is better than the next group of people. And we have to understand that the reason why there's so much division and there's so much cloudiness when it comes to success for the Black community is really a lot of us that's standing in our own way. I'm gonna get up out of here, y'all. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please leave some comments at the bottom. What do you think it is that's holding Black Americans back? Is it the system? Is it systemic racism, as the liberal man said in the last video I posted? Or is it individual struggles of oneself? I love to hear from you. Let's keep the conversation going in the chats. I do speak back. I'm a real person. So I will talk back to you. Look, don't shoot the messenger. Only receive the message. If it's for you, receive it. If it's not, leave it. See you all next time. Peace.
Just trying to stay sucker free in a world full of lollipops. I'm seeing all the ops. Fake news, fake views. It's an illness, the cure to the sick shit. It's the pretty realist.